This is a response video to a commenter who asked for a video specifically on night shift and for older adults. I shot it previously. I wanted to condense it a little bit. I want to preface by saying, this is from a med surg point of view, acute care. So you're only talking probably like 3 shifts a week, and in an acute care setting, and a 54-year-old nurse. Recent nurse. I've only been a nurse now like a little over 4 years. There's a lot of videos out there about night shift, and they'll go over like the health ramifications of night shift, the difficulties of that, diabetes risk, hypertension risk, sleep deprivation, and I agree with, by and large, most. I probably saw like 6 or 8 videos, just for this video, and I've watched them in the past too. So I don't know, maybe a dozen, let's say. So not a lot of research, but I went to the usual suspects that I subscribe to and I watch, and also whatever feeds YouTube sends up. But I agree with most everything they said, if not almost everything they said. But melatonin, blackout curtains, white noise machine, and protecting your sleep. But I think, again, this is why my channel is maybe set apart from a lot of them, is that this is an older nurse's point of view. We have older nurse problems, older people problems, from a new nurse perspective. It's like, it's not just someone who's been a nurse for 30 years and then telling you how they deal with it and they evolve, their families evolve. No, this is someone who's been a nurse for 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, gonna be a nurse in 3 years, gonna be a nurse in 3 months, whatever. And then how are we going to deal with that? So that's the difference of my perspective versus most of theirs. And theirs is valid, don't get me wrong. That's why I say look at their videos also and get their knowledge of the nuts and bolts. I don't want to add it to this one, because then this will be a 20-minute video, and that's not what I want this video to be. I want to be pretty quick. The difference for night shift for us versus someone just starting out, like my daughter's just starting out in nursing, is responsibility and maturity. More responsibility, really. She answers to nobody but her dog, basically, and I help take care of the dog. Now, if you're a young nurse and you have children and you have a partner, then it's a little different too. But by and large, a lot of the new nurses that I see, they're single, they just graduated, they might still be living with their parents. We're the parents in this scenario, right? So we're the adults, we're the mature ones, we're the ones paying the mortgage, the car payments, insurance, and all that stuff. Although my daughter is gonna start. I told her, hey, you're an adult now, you're a super adult, you're earning as much as me, you're chipping in. But for us, becoming a new nurse with that built-in structure, that social structure already for 20 years, 30 years after we became an adult. So we're talking, you're minimum 30 years old to 50 years old or maybe older. Your family, your social network is used to you being a certain way. All of a sudden you have to be a nurse. You got to change. And ironically, it's going to be changing differently than what you were. You have to learn to say no. You have to learn to not help like at the drop of a hat and with no questions asked. That was an adjustment my family had to make to me, as I had to make the first adjustment to do that. Because I was still saying yes, still saying, yeah, I'll help you. I can be counted on. I'd reply right away on the text. I'd be right there at moment's notice, right? Instantaneous response. You can't do that as a nurse now. You have, well, at least on the days you work. And that's why I preface that. You have 4 days where you could still be that person. But for those 3 days, for acute care bedside med surg, which is where 75% of our profession resides, you can't. You're working. And that is your priority. You gotta work. You're putting food on the table. You're paying the mortgage. You're doing all that. You're being the adult. you're just doing that for 3 days versus maybe 9 to 5, 5 days a week before, or 6 days, or the homemaker, and I had to wear all those roles. So it was a big change for my family to all of a sudden realize, oh, Ray's not available all the time. Why? And I got some blowback, they were like, you're doing your thing now. I was like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. One, I have to do my thing. Two, you guys have always done your thing. And now you don't like your own medicine? Back off. You can't respond when you're on the unit. You can't respond when you're at night. Everybody else is asleep. So they got to learn to make that adjustment, and I don't want to say live without you, but they have to respect your boundaries. And what I mean by that is, nighttime, they're sleeping, you're working, no problems. Your paths aren't going to cross, right? Well, during the day, they're living their normal lives for those 3 days, going to school, going to work, staying home, whatever. They're living their normal diurnal lives. We are on a nocturnal schedule for those 3 days. You're asleep, but you're home. So for them, you're still available. You could be woken up. You're just sleeping. You're just napping. And I've said to them, and you got to say to your family, your social network, that how about I call you at 3 a.m. in the morning and we can discuss it then. I'll be up, or I'll stay up. I'll keep my cycle one more day, even though I'm not working. I'll call you at 3 a.m. I'm wide awake. They're like, what? I'm going to be asleep. Well, then I'm asleep at 3 p.m. Don't wake me. It's because I'm on night shift. And I had, my 30 years, I had night shift people for 30 years. And they adhered to it. They were factory workers. They were production people. They did other type of work, but it was still night shift. Night shift, Look up the Commodore song. It is there, It's a thing. We worked the night shift. People had a hard time with that because you're home. They assume you're readily available. They're awake, you're awake. It's that mentality. They can't put themselves in your shoes. But also, in the beginning, it was my giving nature. And that's what we are. We're nurses. We learn, we give. We care for others. And that's why I say, parents are more natural nurses. And adjustment to be a nurse is easier because we're used to sacrificing for our children. We're used to giving and taking care of them. The difficulty in nursing is not the nursing aspect of it. And that's where I see a lot of people get tripped up. They're like, oh, the schoolwork and all that. That's the easy part. The subtle difference is the clinical part where you have to be there. In our state, there's a certain amount of clinical hours you must have. It doesn't matter you got straight A's in class. It doesn't matter you passed all your clinicals up to that point. If you got cancer all of a sudden, you got to go chemo treatments or radiation treatments, and you miss X amount of, the minimum amount of clinicals, you cannot pass. They do not care. They do not make exceptions. It is a hard, fast line. There's no wiggle room there. I was talking to the chair of my department at school, and then she was explaining for the COVID. I was the COVID class. They're like, "Wow, we just made it by a week. If we had started a week later on the clinicals or what have you, we couldn't graduate you guys." And I was like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, it didn't matter what your grades are. We have to answer to the State Board of Nursing and have to attest that you have X amount of clinical hours. You don't have it. You don't have it in the correct setting. Cannot be nurses." That's why you can't do all virtual. You have to have some clinical experience where they can attest to. It doesn't matter the class. That's taking a test, doing presentations, doing care plans. They don't give a crap about that. In the sense of that's just for passing NCLEX. To be a nurse, you gotta have clinical time. You gotta be focused and devoted to that. And that's where that sacrosanct time, that set aside, is antithetical to where you were in your previous life for nursing, where you were dad, mom, whatever, son, daughter, and at a drop of a hat, they could text you, they could call you, they could run up to you, they could knock on your door, whatever, and say, wake up, feed me, whatever. No, I'm sleeping. food's already prepared. You got to do all the prepping and all that stuff, laundry and all that. He's still responsible for that, right? Hopefully kids grow up eventually like mine. But that aspect has to be adjusted for or educated to your family and social network that, no, I can't go out drinking. No, I can't go out partying. No, I'm in nursing school. I have these 4 other days. I can go do that, and that's where, like, with my recent ex-girlfriend, a few years ago when I was a nurse still, I just became a nurse. She didn't understand that for some reason. I didn't, she was a teacher. Her sister was actually a doctor. She was like, "You're not available." I was like, "No, I'm available a fair amount of time. You're not available, or you don't want to devote that time to me." That's a disconnect, My girlfriend presently has been a nurse for 18 years. So she intimately knows the schedules, and she knows what it requires to be a night shift nurse. She did it for probably, I think, 14 years as a night shift nurse. And she works a respiratory. She's a respiratory therapist as well as an RN. So she is intimately knowledgeable about the healthcare system and what it requires. That's something that as older adults, we come in with a pre-made family social network that's a little bit more mature and a bit more used to access to us than someone who's 22, 24. I had a 20-year-old graduate classmate of mine. So, they're young kids. They answered to nobody. She didn't even have a car. She drove her parents' car. I don't think she even had a license. She went to get her license late. So, these are your classmates. They don't deal with the same things you're going to deal with on night shift, because that change in timing is different for you than for them. Them, they just go, I can't party like I could last year or whatever. You're not partying. You're happy to get sleep. You're happy to get the groceries done and laundry and have them not bother you during sleep. Whereas they're teenagers, barely out of teenagers, they're used to sleeping during the day. People don't bother them. Their friends are sleeping, or whatever, They're like, oh yeah, I'm sleeping, so, So then they wake up and they go party, Us, no, we wake up and we go working, or we're turning our schedules so that we're there 9 to 5 for our families, or, really 8 to whatever, early, getting them ready for school. Doing the house chores, all that stuff, the parenting, or the adulting, really. So that aspect is the difference, where the other videos that I kind of watched and you see out there don't go over. All of them are valid. All the things that I saw from other nurses talking about night shift is valid. The melatonin, the blackout curtains, the hypertension risk, the diabetes risk, the stress of it, the pay differential, the management, the lack of support, all those objective stuff is true, and I agree with that. I didn't want to go over that though. This one I wanted to be much more directed to how an older adult is going to deal with night shift. What difficulties are we going to encounter? And the main one that was different from them is the fact that our social network, our families are much more established and used to laying hands on us whenever they wanted to. And that's the biggest part, is that they have to learn no. You have to learn to say no to that and draw delineation lines and set that in place. And I find that is a very difficult thing. Schoolwork, finals, presentations, care plans, those things are easy compared to that. Because how difficult is it to talk to your parents? How difficult is it to talk to your friends? How difficult is it to talk to your kids? To set boundaries. Chatting with them is one thing. Setting boundaries to say no is very difficult, especially for characters, personalities like us that we naturally gravitate to nursing. It is not natural for us to say no and deny people. We want to please people. We're people pleasers. So, all the other things are true that the other videos would talk about. I don't think any of them went over this, because again, this is the This is the hook that my channel is. Like, we're older people. We're dealing with this. So I hope this helped. This was in response to a commenter who has, can you do a video specifically on Nightshift for older adults? And I said, a lot of this stuff is on other videos, and those are great sources. I used them when I was in nursing school. So please feel free, search up on YouTube and they'll go over it. This one is that subtle difference of social adjustment that you have to do. It is super critical. I think it's more important than any of those, actually, because those things you can deal with. You could take heart medication, you can take diabetes medication, you can get sleep, you can get melatonin, you can get blackout curtains. But standing up to your parents, drawing the line with your kids, and prepping them and your friends, that's sometimes a lot harder. We'd rather go without sleep. We'd rather have the high blood pressure. We'd rather have the issue than have to have that confrontational talk to say, no, leave me alone. But that is what you have to do. That's the difficult thing, okay? Good luck.